Hi, welcome to the presentation of Easton-Bell Sports. We're doing the transition of wood hockey sticks to composite one-piece hockey sticks. This is by Martin Sunstead, Connor Crumlish, and Kevin Patterson. Our talking points today, we're going to start off with history of the company, then we're going to move into technology, and then marketing and advertising techniques. The history. The company was originally started by a man named Doug Easton. How it actually started was he was on a hunting trip when he was 15 years old, and he had a shotgun propped up against the car, and it somehow fell and ended up discharging and wounding him in the legs. And after it wounded him, he was hospitalized for a very long time, and while he was in the hospital, he was given a book by Dr. Saxon T. Pope titled Hunting with the Bow and Arrow. And he read this book and became fascinated with archery and how to craft arrows and craft bows. And he eventually started to craft his own arrows with aluminum arrow shafts. Now, Doug Easton started crafting aluminum arrow shafts, and he was actually in a park one day shooting when a man approached him and commented on what a great craftsman he was. And Doug Easton credited the book he had read by Dr. Saxon T. Pope for his craftsmanship. And as the conversation went on, he eventually realized the man he was talking to was Dr. Saxon T. Pope. So this sparked him to start his own business, and he started working part-time, and he supported himself as a truck driver. He did that for about 10 years. Then World War II, his business halted because of the demand for aluminum in World War II, so he basically stopped business because he couldn't get his hands on any aluminum. But in 1932, he devoted himself fully to his craft, and he moved his headquarters to Los Angeles. So James Easton, Doug Easton's son, eventually took over the company and helped him out in 1960. He was an engineering major from UCLA, and his goal was to expand the company beyond archery. And he expanded it so much in his time, he's still around today, from archery to ski poles, and they actually even developed specialized parts for NASA space shuttles at one point. Now, there are a few key concepts involved in hockey stick technology to understand Easton. The first would be flex. Now, what flex is, it's the bending of the shaft of the stick. Now, unlike baseball bats, they make contact with the baseball and don't move. Hockey sticks actually bend when they make contact with the puck, and this is called flex. So scientists, to analyze this, use a deformation equation shown here. If you're not a physicist, you're not going to really understand it, but basically what it means is it shows the power that comes from the shaft snapping back into its original place. So the shaft makes contact with the puck and it bends, and it's snapping back into its original shape is what propels the puck forward. Okay, so in explaining flex, every stick has a flex rating. So this particular stick is a 65. Now that means it takes 65 pounds of force to bend the shaft of this stick. So as you can see here, if you put your body weight into it, it bends. But a problem Easton ran into was every player is a different height, every player is a different weight, and every player has different strengths. So they had to balance in every stick what a proper flex rating would be. And they also had to keep in mind that with height, as you cut a stick down, it stiffens because it's shorter. So this particular stick, if you look, it has an INT right here, which stands for intermediate, which means this stick, the shaft dimensions and flex were created for a smaller player, usually someone who weighs less or developing teenagers, generally between 10 and 15 years old. Now the next concept to understand is lie. Now what lie is it's the relationship of the angle of the shaft to the blade. So every player has a preference point where they like to hold their hands while they have the puck. A flatter lie allows you to hold your hands lower and handle the puck farther away from the body, whereas a higher lie you can handle it closer to your body and keep your hands higher. So here's an example. This stick is a 5 lie, and this one is a 6. When you put the blades so they're flat on the ice, you can see that there's about a 1-inch difference in between those, and where a player has to hold his hands to keep his blade flat. Now the last concept to understand is the concept of curves. every stick has a different curve, and every player prefers different things. Some curves are taller, some are longer, and some are deeper. The one on the right is a much shallower curve than the one on the left. It has a square toe as opposed to a round toe on the one on the left. And the face and angle of the blade on the left stick is much more open than the one on the right. So a challenge for Easton to overcome with switching from wood to composite is wood sticks, if you wanted to make a curve and change the lie, all you had to do was take a blowtorch to heat up the blade and the wood would bend and then fuse back into place later. The problem with doing that with composite is you can do it, but the materials lose intrinsic value and they tend to break much more quickly if you do that. So what Easton did is they created blade charts. Now these blade charts display everything you'd want to know about the curve. It'll tell you the lie, the depth, the type of curve, how the face is shaped, and the toe. And if you look here, you see P2, P3, P4. This is how the company Easton refers to their curves. But for their marketing scheme, they assign the names of NHL players to the curve so people associate that. So maybe a younger player wants to be like Taylor Hall, so he's going to choose that curve when he goes into the store, when in reality it's not the actual player's curve. Now here's an example of a mold they used to make a blade. Since they can no longer take blowtorches to the blade and manipulate the curve so easy, they have to create molds for each standard pattern that they make. Now in 2000, Easton released the first fully one-piece composite hockey stick called the Synergy. We have an example of one of those here. Now their goal was to always create the newest and most innovative technology to increase performance, and then what they would do is they would patent that technology to keep competitors from using it. So at the time, this stick had filed for patent, but it was not given yet. We can see right here the patent pending on the stick. And then later they created the Stealth line as opposed to the Synergy line. Now what the Stealth line features is what's called a taper. If you can look down the shaft there, you'll see an elliptical profile. It's the ellipse shape, and what this does is it prevents the shaft from twisting, because the elliptical shape is not physically able to twist as much as a rectangle can. This also reduces what's called the kick point of the stick, and it makes flex a lot easier. So shorter players can use this stick, and if they need to cut length off the top, it still flexes very well because of the elliptical profile. So Easton's strategy was to life cycle the Synergy line and the Stealth line. So what this means is they have a new stick coming out every 6 months, and the stick always has new technology involved in it. The problem with this is it causes massive price inflation, because with new technology comes higher prices every time they release a new stick. So to get all this new technology, they poured massive amounts of money into R&D, and they created sport tech labs, which were research labs designed specifically for their sports. They had some for baseball, some for hockey, some for other sports, but mainly they're always trying to increase use value in the technology, innovate, and then patent their products. They had to become masters of metallurgy. So the problem with composite sticks is they always had to match lightweight with durability. Some sticks are more durable than others, and some are lighter than others, and they're always trying to seek the balance of where their products are lasting long enough that people will buy them, and they're light enough that they beat using wood as an alternative.
My name is Martin Sunstead, and I'll be talking about advertising and marketing. Easton does not do much advertising outside of their own website, and this is because it's be considered a luxury good, whereas it's very inelastic, where as price goes up, people will still demand it if they believe the product is worth paying for. Their number one marketing technique are performance-based results from well-known NHL players. After the 2011 Stanley Cup playoffs, Easton released a performance study that showed that they were the number one product in the market. The study showed that they were number one in NHL playoff goals, number one in NHL playoff points, and Mike Camilleri led all first-round players in points with 10. His stick of choice was the Easton Stealth RS. Along with this, his teammate David Krejci led all players in points with 12 goals, 11 assists throughout the entire playoffs, and his stick of choice was also the Easton Stealth RS. If you were to walk into a store today and try to buy an Easton Stealth or an Easton Mako, this is what they would look like today. The Stealth comes stock black with yellow trim, whereas the Mako is white with orange trim. In my personal experience, I buy from an Easton rep who works directly from the factory under NHL player supervision. And the stick here on the right is an Easton Synergy EQ50. It is an extension of the original Easton Synergy brand. And as you can see, it looks very similar to the Stealth RS on the right, whereas this on the left here is what a stock Stealth RS looks like. It's very common at the professional levels for them to be painted differently than what the stick they're actually using. On the left we have a stock Easton Stealth RS, and on the right we have a pro stock Easton Synergy EQ50. As you can see, they look very similar, and it all has to do with the Easton life cycle, where they want the new brand to be in the eye of the consumer. And sometimes pro players don't necessarily like the way that the new stick looks, so they might paint it the other way around, where the new stick looks like the old one. But in this situation, the stick on the right is an older model painted as a new one in order to get it into the eye of the consumer. And as you can see, the only real difference is the stick on the left has the elliptical shape and the stick on the right has a square shape. And this is how you know that the stick on the right is not actually a Easton Synergy Stealth RS. To expand on professional players not always using the stick that you see, here is Patrick Elias, who is known for being endorsed by Warrior Hockey. As you can see, he's wearing Warrior Hockey gloves here. But in this picture, he is using an Easton Stealth RS. And this could be one of two things. He's either switching to the new product, or he's using a Warrior stick wrapped in Easton RS. And this is to get the consumers to buy that product. He could either be getting paid by Easton more than he was by Warrior to use this, or it's just a personal preference, he likes the way that it looks. Here is another picture that also exhibits this. This is an Easton Mako on the left, and this again is an Easton Stealth RS.
So in summary, we have the history of Doug Easton starting the company through archery. Eventually they got to hockey, and we went over the technologies of flex, curves, and tapers, and the creation of blade charts. We had marketing techniques. We talked about advertising, how Easton didn't have much of a need to advertise because their products were always the greatest and people wanted to use them, and how they life cycled their products, so they always had innovative technology coming out. The overall main strategy of Easton Hockey is to always increase use value and be the best performer in the marketplace. This has been a presentation of Easton Hockey and the transition from wood to composite sticks, and here are our works cited.